And yes, we walked out of the cabin one morning and there is a sea of tarantulas walking across the main yard. And yes, I had probably 7 or 8, 11, 12-year-old girls with me. Yeah, it was an interesting weekend. A lot of screaming, a whole lot of screaming.
This is the Aptitude Outdoors podcast, where we interview travelers, explorers, and outdoorsmen and women to bring you the best tips and stories from around the world.
All right. Round 2. We're having a great, wonderful technical difficulty morning out here, but we are in beautiful Texas. We are out here in the heart of Texas. And I'm joined by Camille and Laura of Heroes on the Water. Welcome to that podcast. How are you both doing this morning?
We're great. We're wonderful.
So, I asked this question before. I'll ask you again. Why did you both get involved with Heroes on the Water? Because my whole podcast is about getting people outdoors, whether it's hunting, fishing, backpacking, kayaking. I do all these activities. I love all these activities, love the outdoors. So what drew you to Heroes on the Water? Because you guys have a great mission statement.
Thank you. For me, it was about just growing up in the outdoors and loving it like you did, and just seeing how it positively impacted my own family. And then being able to work with veterans, first responders, and their families to give back to a group of people that give so much to us. So to me, that was just a double win. And Camille actually was there in the beginning when our founder, Jim, had the epiphany about why he wanted to start a kayak fishing organization, so she can tell you how that worked. It's a great story.
Absolutely. Let's hear it.
I like Laura, I grew up in the outdoors too, but I am the wife of a Houston police officer and very familiar with what the term secondary trauma. And so we met Jim at a kayak fishing school years ago that my husband was doing with a friend of ours. And he was talking about the healing powers and how much more relaxed he was. He went out to BAMC or Brooks Army Medical and worked with one of the recreational therapists and said, hey, let's take these guys kayak fishing. And so they took a group of guys in therapy as part of their weekly therapy session. They took them down for a weekend down on the coast and took them kayak fishing. My husband was there at the time, and it was phenomenal to watch the difference between when they got there Friday night, and most of these were TBI, so traumatic brain injury patients. And some of them were just non-communicative. Is that the word I'm looking for, Lord?
They just didn't.
They didn't.
Talk to you at
they
all.
spoke when spoken to, but they weren't going to engage in a conversation. Well, one of them that really stuck out to my husband was when we had a really hard time getting him in a boat because he was just like, y'all go ahead. Y'all go ahead, And we finally get him in a boat. We finally get him out on the water. By the end of the weekend, we could not shut him up. All he could talk about was all the fish he caught and how beautiful it was and how calm it was. And once on a recap with his therapist, one of the things that she explained was coming home and being in the hospital and going through everything that he went through, he had built up walls. Mm-hmm. And there was nothing behind those walls that was safe to talk about with the general public. Mm-hmm. And so he just didn't want to burden anybody with it. So what we gave him in this experience was something safe to talk about. So we made him safe, being out on the water, being calm. It wasn't hectic. It was quiet. And he could relax enough to enjoy what he was doing and develop new, safe memories and things to talk about. So
that's awesome. And it's funny because I think for anybody who fishes a lot can attest that fishing might be considered a stressful activity, depending on how into it you are. Because we've been fishing out here for the last day and a half or so, and people were getting a little frustrated yesterday. No fish, but they were catching them this morning.
And the difference is, too, it's a perspective. If you're coming at it from where they've been, be it a first responder or EMT or, a veteran, they have a better perspective on life than the general public. So they can say, it's not about, I want to catch a bunch of fish. It's about, I get to be out here.
Yeah. And it changes their focus. They're always telling me that it gives them a mission. It's something to focus on, right? And so they get to retrain their brain in a way doing kayak fishing that they're not able to do just walking around or sitting on a therapist's couch. And that's why we know it helps them. We have people that have worked with us at the Center for Brain Health in Dallas, and they tell us the immersive experience of being in the kayak and the paddling and relieving that tension, and then the focus on the fishing is what helps them to adjust some of that hypervigilance that they feel. And it lasts. And the thing that's interesting that we found is it doesn't matter how long it's been. So whether you're a Vietnam vet or you're brand new, it doesn't matter. You get the same benefit regardless.
And I found that same thing to be true because in the world we live in now, everything's so fast-paced, stressful. We all have this, even people who just work at a regular job have this social media presence they have to be part of for work most of the time, and it's very fast paced, and coming out here and doing something like this, or just going out and fishing or kayaking or hunting or whatever, you're just away from it. And I think that is so underestimated because kind of as a society we kind of have grown to not appreciate the outdoors. All of us here at this conference, the Hunt Fish Podcast Summit, we love this. This is why we're here. We come from all over the country, all over Texas, everywhere. And I always want to get this message to the general public. If you can get over the fear of bugs and the little being dirty and stuff, there's endless awesome experiences to be had in the outdoors. And I think what you guys are doing is amazing. I wish there was groups like this everywhere in the world, in the country, because it's so important. And I grew up in the outdoors and I've always loved the outdoors, but as I've turned into an adult, it's become the foundation. It's everything. So what, either of you, do you have experiences in your life that really kind of drew you to this outdoors nature, healing work that you're in now? Because we don't all just get to work in the outdoors our whole life. Most of us don't.
So I know Camille does. For me, mine's really simple. My dad just could never find a place where he felt like he belonged when it came to where he worked. So we moved around a lot. And the times that he was the happiest and the whole family was the happiest and the calmest was on the lake when we were out. And he loved being outdoors and he taught us a lot. And so we learned at a very early age, and that's now we're teaching my nieces, my sisters teach their children that being in the outdoors is a calming, wonderful, amazing place to be, and it's to be respected and enjoyed, right? So for us, it really had to do with just finding a way that our whole family could be happy and calm and have a great time, out on the water.
Yeah.
So
there's nothing better.
Yeah,
I would say. I love being on the water.
I grew up fishing with my dad. That was our family vacations. It was our every weekend we were on a lake or a river or something. So I grew up fishing. I married a man who hunted and fished and played golf.
You didn't seem so excited about that last time.
My husband does not lack for recreational activities.
You sound like somebody that I live with right now.
So, but my husband, like I said, he was 23-year veteran of the Houston Police Department. His last 13 years was homicide division. Being in Houston, he saw a lot of things. And he dealt with them by going outdoors. If he had a really bad case, and he dealt a lot with shaken baby and SIDS cases. He would come home and very sweetly say, all right, the case is closed. I'm done. I'll see you in about 4 days. And he would grab his kayak, his boat, and all his rods and reels and go down the coast for 2 or 3 days by himself. That was his way of coming back to the family whole. Because everything that he had seen and done, he did not want it to affect his kids and us and bring that stress home. So he went and reset. That's kind of how he looked at it, was a reset. When Jim started Heroes on the Water and we started talking about what he wanted it to become, it started off, it's just, for him, it was just amazing to have a couple of chapters in Texas. We now have close to 60 chapters throughout the U.S.
Wow.
They're all volunteer ran, and a lot of them are ran by first responders or veterans that started off attending an event and just fell in love with the program and wanted to expand it to where they were or where they were going. So it's definitely, and a lot of it, let me back up. A lot of our volunteers also have a need to give back. It's they know what they got out of it when they attended, and part of their own therapy, their own long-term coping mechanisms is volunteering and showing this to other people.
Yeah.
So to back up a little bit more, Jim Dolan is our founder.
Oh, sorry.
We keep talking about Jim like everybody knows who he is.
Just Jim, yeah.
Just Jim, you know
know
Jim.
Jim.
Yeah, retired Air Force and then flew for American, and realized that our veterans coming back home were not getting everything that they needed to reintegrate, which is true, which is why there's so many veteran service organizations trying to fill those gaps. And he would always say they come back home alive and we bring them back to life.
Hey everybody, Paul here with Aptitude Outdoors. You know, I got a little tip jar I've put down below. If you think the show is worth your time, if you're getting something out of it, you can go to the link below, buy me a coffee. You can throw me $5 if you're getting something out of this show. As you know, it's all self-funded. I get a sponsor here and there occasionally, but other than that, I'm doing all this out of my own pocket. So if you feel like you're getting some good knowledge, good information, or just enjoy listening, throw me a bone. If not, keep on keeping on, baby. I want the show to be free. Just throwing out a tip jar. So thank you all for listening or watching this show.
You know, the one thing that I really enjoy about coming to Texas every year is it seems like everybody down here does some sort of recreational outdoors stuff, whether it's hunting or fishing or whatever. There's tons of opportunities down here that I don't necessarily have in Ohio. And it's so awesome that there's just this massive community. Like Derek, you know, everybody knows Derek. He's bringing all these people together every year. And everybody's just 100% into it. We all just wake up early, go do this stuff, fish, hunt, whatever, all day. And then we come out and we hang out and we get to tell these stories from all over the country. It's so amazing. So how, excuse me, how did you guys meet Derek? Because he knows everyone. Derek's such a great guy. I don't know how, like.
So I introduced Laura to Derek fairly recently.
Yeah.
Derek and I run in the same crowd. We're from the same part of Houston area, you know. Him and I, several years ago, were at a Houston fishing show. And we just, you know, I was working for a retailer at the time, and he was looking for donations for the brigade. And we started talking about what he does with the brigade and what he needed, and I started helping make introductions. I was a buyer for a retail store, so I knew who he needed to talk to. So, and then Derek's Derek. He, you know, he didn't need me. He just needed me to point him in the right direction sometimes, you know. So Yeah, we just, and so every year at ICAST, we would run into each other and hang out. At the Houston Fishing Show, we would hang out. The Houston Boat Show, we would hang out. So we just run in the same crowd.
Awesome. That's awesome. And so with these fishing shows, is this mostly where you're doing a lot of your outreach? Is this where you're like, or is this just kind of where you're spreading awareness? Because I don't know much about the fishing shows. Derek's invited me to some stuff, but it's like, you can only fly to Texas so many times a year, you know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah.
So the Houston Fishing Show is almost 50 years old now, but it's an expo of hunting, fishing, mostly fishing, outfitters, vendors, retailers, and lodges. Yeah, it's just a kind of a culmination. Boat dealers.
Right.
They're all in one roof.
So does Heroes on the Water, do you have your own kayaks and all of this stuff? How does that work? Because that's like a big part of a lot of nonprofits, or any organization that's helping people out. They need a lot of equipment a lot of the time, because I used to work in a conservation place, and it's like all we ever did was try to raise money for equipment. And it's a pain in the butt. So do you have all your own equipment, or do you rent it, or how does that work?
Yeah, so we, our chapters, one of the things that we have them do is reach out to the community and get really involved. And they do their own fundraising that way. And so we provide the kayaks, the PFDs, the rods and reels, all of the equipment and lunch to our participants at the events, and all of that is done through fundraising through the different communities. So the community support has been amazing. We've been super lucky, and when we're not coming out of the heels of a pandemic where we don't have a supply chain issue, we are really lucky to work with several different manufacturers that help us when we can order, in bigger quantities, which just helps us do better with our donor dollars. So like I said, we do all of that stuff so that we can provide that free to our participants to use while they're at our events. And that's one of the benefits of having somebody like Camille, because she's got such great industry experience. She's really helped us up our game in that area. So, we're thankful that she's here.
So the real important question is, if people want to give you some cash, where can they go to do that?
Heroes, that's my favorite conversation.
Yeah.
So it's really simple. You go to heroesonthewater.org and you can donate to us as a part of the national program. There's just a donate button on the top right-hand corner. Super easy. If you want to donate to a specific chapter, there is a programs button. You hit volunteer-led chapters, find a chapter, and the donation goes directly to that group. So
Sweet.
However you want to do it.
Dump some money into this, people. Come on. But so your volunteer program, sounds like you need a pretty extensive volunteer network to make this happen. And that is, as someone who used to be program coordinator at a nonprofit, I definitely understand that. So how is this an organic thing? Like, are your volunteers just kind of like helping you find more volunteers? Or are you finding volunteers yourself? Because without volunteers, it's hard to run an organization.
It is. It very much at this point. It's been organic, and we're very fortunate that our mission speaks to a lot of people, and so the more that the word gets out that we exist, the more people that just. And they all come to me. So I get probably 5 to 6 inquiries a week to start a new chapter.
That's impressive.
It is. They don't all pan out. In some, like we've got a very active chapter, a brand new chapter up in your neck of the woods.
Oh, really?
And it came to me. This was one of the first, when I came on board as a full-time staff, this was one of the first chapters I helped open. Military, first responder, both. It was a military turned first responder. And they were just very adamant. They had been to an event and wanted to start a chapter. And sometimes we have to kind of slow them down a little bit. But I love the enthusiasm. I love that they're ready to get started. But yeah, we have one in Southwest Ohio.
Wow. That's awesome.
So what Camille's not telling you is that she and her team have an amazing system. So we don't just go, here, start a chapter.
Yeah.
Good luck with that. Yeah, so they have a whole onboarding system, and everything that we've done is using our 14-year history to make sure that we set you up for success and to be sustainable, because we want to, once we start in a community, we want to continue to serve that community and not have anything go south. And you understand how this goes as someone who's done it. Yeah. You've got to make sure you've got the right foundation in place. So they make sure that that happens.
Well, I think that's a good sign when you have people coming to you without even doing anything, wanting to work, because that's always the hard part. Like, people want these organizations to exist, but the reality is they take a ton of work, and you need a lot of help from community. And the outdoors community is awesome. Mm-hmm. It's the best community I've ever been a part of. The people in it are amazing, and like, everybody usually has the same goal in the end, whether it's either helping people or conservation. Helping people, conservation. And that's one of the things I talk to a lot of people out here often, and we have these perceptions of not only hunters, but fishermen and all this stuff as these like redneck backwoods throwing trash in the water. And I really hate that stereotype, because it's so not true. Everyone here is the opposite of that. Everyone. I've never met anyone like
every
that.
good redneck I've ever known is the true conservationist.
There we go. There we go. Now we're talking. You get it.
Well, and we were all, I think it's more, if you were raised in the outdoors, you were raised with the leave it better than you found it.
Absolutely.
You were, you want to walk into a place knowing that it's going to be taken care of. So you do your part. It's just the way most of us were raised.
Right. And if it wasn't, you assume the city people had been there.
I won't comment on it. As someone who has never once lived in a city in my entire life, I appreciate the sentiment. But let's step back a minute. Before we got on the podcast, you had mentioned a migration in here in Texas of tarantulas. That I'm confused here, because that doesn't sound like something anybody wants to partake in, even me, who's not really too squeamish about animals. What, do you experience this in person?
I did. I did experience it in person. It was the first time, and up until that point, knew nothing about it, because I live on the coast. We don't have the creepy crawly things on the coast. They're a central hill country, her neck of the woods kind of thing. We don't even have, I mean, we don't, they have scorpions, again, on the coast, they don't like that much moisture, so we don't have them. So I had never seen it before. But yes, I had a group of Girl Scouts at horse camp one summer. And the horse camp is it's a few hours south of here, but it's in central part of Texas. And yes, we walked out of the cabin one morning, and there is a sea of tarantulas walking across the main yard. And yes, I had probably 7 or 8 11, 12-year-old girls with me. Yeah, it was an interesting weekend. A lot of screaming, a whole lot of screaming.
See, all I was aware of was the rattlesnakes and scorpion side, but the tarantula thing, that adds a whole new element. I'll have to talk to Chester about that, because Chester Moore, for those listening, I'm interested to learn more about that. What?
Life is hard, and we're out here doing larger-than-life things, whether it's pushing ourselves physically in the outdoors or mentally at work or in the podcast studio. Absolute Aid is here to help you focus, recover, and stay calm during your most intense moments. Absolute Aid, created by nature, made with science, for those who seek to do more.
We were talking about this earlier. I love Texas. I love coming down here. Everybody's great. There's so much awesome stuff to do outdoors-wise. I mean, I've seen more animals this morning out here than I would see at home in probably like, I don't know, a whole day of searching. So it's really awesome. I saw a beaver right behind me here. I was playing around over there. There's just so much cool stuff. Oh, my good friend Seth's over there, just standing,
I see.
Getting pictures of beaver apparently. But it's so awesome. And there's someone from the north, the Midwest. Texas has a perception. You know the perception because you live here. But it's such an awesome state, because you can start on the east side of Texas. Forests, kind of just looks like south.
Piney woods.
Woods. You head to the center. It's kind of like this, what we're in right now. Kind of like, I don't know what you call this, scrub swampy.
Yeah, scrubby,
That works,
rocky.
yeah.
Beautiful. Awesome. And then you got some mountains. Hilly. Mountains somewhere. You got the coast. You
Yeah.
have everything that people fly all over the country to experience in one state. Granted, it's a huge state. It is a very large state.
Yes, it is.
I noticed that people in Texas, it is nothing for someone from Texas to be like, I got to go drive 5 hours. That's
No.
normal. For
Right.
me, I would be like, I would be 6 states away from home if I drove 6 hours. But all right, I got to ask this question. What's your favorite part of Texas? Because you got to have a part that you love the most because it's what you're used to, it's what you like the most.
Wow.
You
that's
can't dodge this
really
question.
Mine's
tough.
easy.
Okay. You
Go.
Mine's-
We'll give you time to think on this
Yeah.
one.
So when my husband retired from the Houston Police Department, our kids were grown, and like later parents, we don't need you. We're like, okay, then we don't have to be in Houston anymore. Where do we want to go? He looked at me, he says, all right, are we going to the hill country or are we going to the coast? And I said, I love visiting the hill country, but I want to live on the coast. I am 5 minutes away from a boat launch. And I have deer, turkeys, and everything in my yard. And that's, I wake up in the morning, I have coffee, and I watch the deer walk through my front yard. And to me, that's heaven.
Yeah. That sounds like heaven to me.
Yeah, I know. That's why I'm going to visit, right? So I grew up in the Panhandle where it's flat, like this table flat,
Yeah.
and kind of like the desert.
I'm familiar with that landscape.
Yeah, right. So I actually love visiting Big Bend because it's so rugged and amazing, and you can see the stars forever. Like that's one of the things. Because I live in the Dallas area, so there's tons of light pollution and blah blah blah. So I love visiting Big Bend. I'm really torn between that and the piney woods because I grew up where there were no trees. So having all those trees and that landscape and that beauty is really comforting to me. Like I love it. So it's I flip a coin. I'll go either place.
All right, fair. I'll take that answer. I was almost on the verge of dodging the answer. I can't. I'll give it to you.
Thank you.
But I've noticed that something interesting about Texas that I've noticed every time I've been here is there's a lot of fences. That's really interesting to me. There's just so many fences everywhere. Like in Ohio, it's all corn. And here, there's a lot of fences. It's just all owned by people. Like I don't know how
Yes.
it works.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's so
Yes.
different.
It's the whole ranch culture,
Ranch
right?
culture.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
This is sweet.
Yeah, and most of it here is low fence. So we're on basically a low fence ranch. A lot of them are high fenced. So we have a lot of white-tailed deer breeders in Texas. We have a lot of people that want to bring in exotics, be it for pets or for hunting. You never know.
Yeah,
It
fair
could be
enough.
both. But yeah, we do. One of the things that I do love, though, is we're all pretty open to sharing. Just because there's a fence doesn't mean you're blocked out.
Fair enough.
You just have to ask permission.
Yeah, just don't be rude.
Yeah, just don't be rude.
I think that could be said for any situation.
Yeah, exactly.
So back to Heroes on the Water. I just had to get that tarantula story in there, and I'm very well known for my tangents of nonsense. That's kind of my thing. So when you take people out fishing, what is like the experience like for them? Because a lot of these people have never done this before, or is it new to them, or what? Like,
It's a mix.
Yeah, it's definitely a mix.
because like the first time anyone catches a fish, it's magical. Like a kid, an adult, anyone. So do you notice an immediate change in their mood, their personality when they go out and do this? Because it's got to be amazing to watch.
It really is. It's. Do you want to tell Sam's story about her first time on the water?
Oh, Sam Horwitz.
Yeah,
So-
one of our board members.
One of our board members is former Secret Service and was there at 9/11 and made I know,
See
right?
you later, Adam.
Right. Yeah, we have some amazing success stories on our website for people that are interested. They're just, it's worth the time. So she actually was on the cover of Time magazine because they snapped her picture. She was taking somebody out, right, like walking with them. And so she's obviously between that and her service as a Secret Service member, is that what they call them? Agent. She has post-traumatic stress. And so we recruited her to be on our board, and we have a board retreat. And she lives, so this is funny, she lives on a lake, and she'd never been fishing. And we're like, we don't even understand what you're talking about.
Possible?
Right? Like, that makes no sense. So we get her in the kayak, and it is very safe. One of the things that we're really passionate about is safety. We want to make sure that you've got everything that you need and that you're safe, and you have to wear a PFD. We don't care if you're a Navy SEAL. Get over yourself. We've had that conversation.
We have had that conversation.
Love you, mean it. Thank you for your service. Put on the life jacket.
Tough love.
Yeah, right? You got to. So she gets out there, she's paddling around, and she just falls in love with it immediately. She's also never been in a kayak. And then she catches her first fish, and you can hear her. It's not a very big lake, but you can hear her across the lake. She is so excited, right? Like, she is just like, I don't know why I've never done this. This is so fun. This is the best thing ever. And so her story is on our website too, but she just really immediately got hooked in. And she does a lot of volunteer and nonprofit work because of her experience and because she's so passionate about giving back. She's like, this thing.
She also has a podcast.
Yeah, she does.
Everybody has a podcast.
Everybody has a podcast.
When are you two starting your podcast? You're pretty good at this. I feel like you could.
Well,
you could
thank
do
you.
it.
Well, apparently right after this.
All right,
Thank
you can borrow my gear. Go interview everybody. I'm really happy to be down here and meet all this. Like, this is the great thing about podcasting, and this isn't a podcast about podcasts, but I would have never gotten to do this if it wasn't for the random encountering of Derek on social media. Like, isn't it so wild how nowadays we do often complain about how social media, and especially like you and I work in social media, and that's like part of our gig. Everybody has to do it now to stay connected with volunteers and such.
Yeah.
We complain about it so much because it is a lot of work, but it brings so much awesome connections together if you're willing to do it and do come down here and do something like this. So, what I don't know how to ask this. Like, what have you seen any benefits to doing, like, running social media, running outreach and stuff like that on your end? Because there's such a toss-up nowadays between, like, I hate social media and it's tearing our world apart, or it's creating such a positive benefit. Because to me, it's only been good. There's, like, people leave mean comments occasionally, but that doesn't matter.
I think I'm going to let you answer this, but I do want to say I think it's like anything else. If you use it for good,
then it's good.
Yeah. If you're using it, for malicious reasons, then
yeah. We and this came from Jim. We just have a policy of we just don't engage in that segment, right? Like, that's not what we're about. We're a very inclusive organization. We're a wellness organization, so it's counter for us to be engaged in anything that's going to be, even if it's trendy, like, we don't care. And so for us, it's been really positive because we get these great comments and people share our content, and we're always sharing the stories that people honor us. It's one of my favorite parts of what I do is that we feel honored that people share their stories about their service and their past and what they've been through. They're really transparent about it, and how working with Heroes on the Water and other VSOs and doing the volunteer work that they do has helped them. Like, to us, that's the best thing we can do, because we really want to give back to this community, because we wouldn't be able to do what we're doing without our military and law enforcement and first responder community. It would be mayhem and chaos. It would be social media live, right? Like, all the time without those dedicated people. So the least we can do is give back to them in a positive way.
Yeah, and I think it's really important what you guys are doing, because especially with, veterans and people that work in these fields, firefighter, police officer, these are very stressful fields. Like I don't think the average person that doesn't have any connection to that would understand, because I have family in the military. My grandfather was in the Marine Corps and the Air Force for his whole life, basically. And then, you know, I've got a cousin in the military right now, and I have friends that are police officers. And, like, I can't imagine the stuff you have to, like, could you imagine having to go to work and see dead people like that? Like, just, like, for real, that is traumatic. And you don't.
Again,
well,
my husband wouldn't.
Yeah, I'm speaking in general. But
Yeah.
it's like, that takes a huge toll on a person. It's not, like, this, for instance, on the way here, we were Seth and I were driving in from Dallas Fort Worth, and there was a cop car on the side of the road, and there was a person just laying there. And, like, what do you assume? Are they dead? Are they passed out? Did they overdose? Or, like, you don't know what happened. And, like, that made me think about your guys' organization. Like, that police officer woke up today, went to work, and there's someone potentially just dead on the side of the road. He is responsible for this now. Like, how do you unload that? So, like, what you're doing is so important because it's giving people a space to be like, okay, like, I have a place where I can go and just not have to think about this right now and deal with it. So, I'm very happy for what you're doing. It's very important. I think more people should be on board with what you're doing because I'm going to say it for the 100,000th time on this podcast. Nature is the best thing for like helping with mental health, everything.
And it's free.
Free.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
It doesn't take a bureaucracy. Say that word for me.
Bureaucracy.
Thank you.
That's why they pay you the big bucks.
Yeah, exactly. To run. You know, it doesn't take a federal budget. It takes volunteers and it takes heart.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And you know, there's so much therapy, so much better that we can offer just by being in nature.
Yeah.
And you disconnect. So there's no, you know, the kiddos get off the cell phones and the tablets and the video games and, you know, the spouses can come out and do whatever the heck they want to do. And that's the other thing about our events, because we have people go, well, I don't like to fish, or I've never been in a kayak, or, you know what, we're not going to make you. It's not that thing, right? You can, if you just want to come and sit by the water in a chair and just relax and decompress, that is awesome.
Or even just come join us for
lunch.
For lunch,
Yeah.
talk to some of the families.
Yeah.
That is something that we really encourage, is that families attend our events. It's not just the veteran or the first responder. It's the spouse and the kids.
And the dog.
And the dog.
Yeah.
That's very important.
Yeah. I watched, my husband was in homicide division. Just quick anecdote. My girls would go to school in the morning, and the big buzz was, "Oh, hey, I saw your dad on the news this morning." Well, when you think about the effects on the kids and stuff, my girls only knew that Dad got called out in the middle of the night. They didn't watch the news that morning. They were too busy getting dressed to go to school. And now everybody's saying, "Oh yeah, I saw your dad on the news this morning." And all they know is if Dad got called out, it was because somebody died. You know, and they're 15, 14. That's a lot of emotional baggage for a kid that age to handle.
Yeah.
So getting the kids involved is critical. The other is, you know, watching these kids that their parent is deployed. And then they get a glimpse of the news and they see things exploding. They do not have the bandwidth to understand that Dad may not be there or Mom may not be there, but they're seeing that. They may not talk about it, they may not say anything, but they're internalizing, and their little imaginations are going, "Oh, I wonder if that's what Mom's doing," or "I wonder if that's what Dad's doing," and I wonder if that's what they're seeing. So these are the things that these kids have gone through, and watching them out on the water with their parent and watching the effect that this has, the calming effect it has on them, the fact that they're doing something together and everything's happy and safe for this moment, is just as important for the kids. and gives them a coping mechanism too. Mom and dad are both with me right now. They're mine. I know they're safe, and I can relax.
And that's all. And another thing that I don't have any children myself, but I know a lot of my friends have kids, and then I have a lot of nieces and nephews. So I think that it's one of the most important things you can do is to get kids outside at an early age. And I try and get my nieces and nephews out as much as possible. Fishing specifically, because up in where we have my family has a little place up in Michigan, and we can fish whenever we want. And it's stressful with children to fish. I say that lightly.
Again, it's perspective,
Yes,
though.
yes.
You just have to change your expectations.
Mm-hmm.
You have to go into it with the right mindset.
Mostly
and
you have
expect to be hooked.
Mostly you have to change fishing line. That's what I found out.
This is true.
That too.
But does that ring true to you? I mean, there's a fine line between forcing kids to go outside when they don't want to and making it like a fun experience for them, which I try very hard to do. But when there's 6 screaming kids with fishing poles, it can be like.
Yeah.
But yeah, does that ring true? I mean, do you think how important do you think that is beyond just the mission of Heroes on the Water? I mean, getting kids outside in general.
Oh, I think I think if they're given the opportunity to go outdoors, most will choose if they have a fun experience.
Yeah.
But it's up to us as the adults to make it fun and not about us, but about them.
I think there's a lot more fear this day and age because of like the access to the news and things with like people getting kidnapped and stuff. Like people don't let their kids just run wild and free outdoors as much as they used to, which when I was a kid, I grew up on 10 acres of woods in the middle of nowhere, and my dad was like, go.
Please,
do not come back for hours, please. And that's where I got my foundation in the outdoors. I mean, I learned things that you don't learn in school about the outdoors as a kid, just covered in mud up to my eyeballs.
I think both of us kind of grew up with exposure to the same kind of thing. My husband, I know, did as well. Although I lived in Houston, I spent my weekends either on the Texas-Louisiana border or down on the coast and was kind of left to my own devices a lot. You know, and I know she grew up
on a farm.
Yeah.
In the middle of nowhere. So, you know.
Yeah.
But I will tell you, I have an autistic grandson who at home, when he's at home, he's living, he calls it Google. It's basically YouTube. But he lives on his tablet.
Yep.
When he comes to my house, he never even asks.
That's awesome. That's great.
And that's the difference. If you give them the opportunity, and go find it. You know, there's a lot of ways in volunteering with an organization, be it with something like us or something where like Derek does with the brigades. There's a lot of opportunity to get kids outdoors. If you're in Texas Parks and Wildlife.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. They have an amazing program for kids. They're a wonderful organization for education. So even if you didn't grow up like we did, and that's something you want to do, just go get online and figure out where they're teaching the next thing and do it yourself. Because as an adult, you'll be glad you did, even if you never experienced it, and your kids will get something out of it that's amazing.
Okay. I want to ask you I'll ask you 2 last questions. One last question is a answer I need. You guys do, with Heroes on the Water, kayaking and fishing. Which one do you like more, kayaking or fishing, if you had to choose?
Kayaking. I don't have to think about it.
I'm a paddle geek too.
Yeah.
I love the fishing aspect of it, but I would be just as happy if all I did was paddle.
I'm a huge kayak fanatic. I love kayaking. My wife and I actually I'm losing track of time because of the whole pandemic thing. I don't know what's happening. I don't know what year we're in. I don't even know what state I'm in. Well, I know I'm in Texas, so that's easy to. But my wife and I kayak. There's this local river, and this is something I'm big on too, is like up where we're at, it's all farmland. So like the river is very muddy, very dirty looking to people, but it's totally fine. It's just dirty water. And we decided that not a lot of people were kayaking this river recreationally, so we were going to do the whole river. So we kayaked from Fort Wayne, Indiana, all the way down to Toledo, Ohio. It was took us 4 days, and did not see a single kayaker out there. We have the largest watershed in the Great Lakes. The Lake Erie water, the watershed for this river, is one of the biggest watershed in our area. Nobody takes any advantage of the river system because they're scared of the water, and we set out to prove that it's totally fine. Nothing's gonna happen. It's totally fine. But I think that's a big thing that people need to take account of. You don't have to do what we're doing right now. You don't have to travel across the country to go enjoy the outdoors.
No.
You can do something fun where you're at, whether you're in the middle of the city. You can drive a few minutes and find something outdoors to do.
Find
I
a
think that's
state
so
park.
important.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's a ton of them.
Yes. So I don't know. It's so hard to get the message out because I'm preaching to the choir. We're all in the
You're
outdoors
right.
community.
Right.
And that's what it is. But, before we wrap up here, I would like to give you the opportunity to let people know. You already went over it once, but I'll never pass up an opportunity to help a nonprofit. So where people can learn more about Heroes on the Water, how they can get involved, how they can give you more money, and so it's all on the website. We make it super easy. It's heroesonthewater.org. If you want to donate, the donate button's in the top right-hand corner. If you want to do anything else with us, just go to the contact form and fill it out. And there's a drop-down, and we make it really easy for you. If you want to volunteer, click that. If you want to partner, click that. We've made it super easy for you to get with us and the right person. If you want to start a chapter that goes straight to Camille, we're really passionate about outreach and making sure the community, we make it easy for you to do. Absolutely. Appreciate that. So I want to thank both of you for sitting out here on this chilly morning under this tree.
It's nice.
Somebody stole our cool spot up there.
I know, I see that.
Go fight him right now. But no, I want to thank you, and I can't wait to hang out for the rest of this weekend, and I'm sure we'll get to do some really exciting stuff.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.